Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 20 of Import Nights, the review series for the JDM performance car selection of GranTurismo 6 in particular, but also of the entire series moving forward into GT Sport most probably when that game comes out. That is of course if we do see more JDM models that we don't already have. Now in this particular pick we're featuring another JDM performance car which I'm a big fan of, very popular performance car from the company Mazda, and one of the best selling rotary engined cars ever built, the Mazda RX-8. This car had a really great production run, it lasted a fair while, I believe the best part of a decade, and it had a couple of redesigns, minor facelifts, and performance updates over its life. There's a wide variety of different models, and on the game there is, for the moment at least, one premium version. And it's the premium version in particular that I'll be covering in this review. But to some degree, as with most premium variations of existing models, you can view this as a review that goes for the other models as well, to a more or lesser degree. But to be specific, these specs that we're going to talk about are specifically for the premium. Now this car, as I said, I love. It's a brilliant performance car as far as I'm concerned, and I really love it when manufacturers make high performance cars that are genuinely usable and practical on a daily basis. That's one of the reasons why my dream cars are things like the Ferrari FF, because they combine extreme performance with actual genuine usability. This does that. Now obviously not on the same level as something like Ferrari FF, but on an attainable level, the RX-8 is a very practical performance car. Technically, it runs the line between being a sports coupe and a sedan, because it's a four-door, four-seater, but it's very much so a coupe. Now as far as power, you've got of course a rotary engine, and that rotary engine is roughly worked out to be around a 1.3 litre. You can turbocharge it, not at all surprisingly, up to actually a really decent amount of power. It's not that much less in fact than the RX-7, and it's actually more than the older FC shape RX-7 can have. 596 horsepower is very strong for this car, stronger in fact than you may expect, because generally on the game, even with Japanese cars, some of the performance models which aren't necessarily top tier, they're more say mid-range, like your Evos, Imprezas, RX-8, that kind of thing, they don't tend to have the high range of power in particular that they deserve to have. The Imprezas and Evos, as I've said numerous times, deserve to have over 600 horsepower in many more forms than those which we actually do get to have that kind of power out of. This car is more powerful than I would have predicted when GT6 first came out. It's actually allowed to have a really good amount of power. Now more of course wouldn't hurt, and the RX-7 definitely deserves more power, especially in FD form, but at least this vehicle does have a decent amount of power. Now combine that power with the fact that, like many rotary vehicles, it's pretty light at only 1,072 kilos with stage 3 weight loss of course, and the performance is really good. The acceleration is very strong and the top speed is really good. The top speed on this car is around 235, 240, and although of course that's nowhere near being the fastest in the game, that does mean that it can comfortably outdo vehicles like Evos, Imprezas. It can run on par with the NSX Type R in a straight line, and various others that you wouldn't necessarily expect an RX-8 to be able to beat. But it can, and that makes this car obviously very useful. But one of the great things about the RX-8 as well, and this is also to some degree true with the RX-7 though in a slightly different way, and that is it has great handling. Now the RX-7 is less forgiving, I would say, than the RX-8. It's more focused, more of a professional driver's sports car, and is of course the quicker of the two. But the RX-8 has more of a kind of a long-distance GT kind of feel to it, which is appropriate due to the fact that it does have that 2+2 seating style. And I love the handling on this car. It has superb handling as far as I'm concerned. It handles itself and the weight that it has really well. It's not an overly small car, but at the same time it doesn't feel big. It feels just right, which I would say the RX-7 shares a very similar feeling in its driving style. As far as value for money, well, it's a Japanese performance car, so it's pretty much bound to be good, and in the case of this car, it is. This car only costs just under a fraction under 29 grand, so it's a lot cheaper than the RX-7, which you're looking at more like 40 grand for the FD RX-7 in premium form. So the price is really good, and that means that as far as price, this car costs the same kind of money that you'd expect a non-premium, say, Silvia or vehicles like that to cost. And although those cars are great as well, that's pretty good value, I would say, for a newer car, as this one is, and also a premium model. Now, as far as the rest of its spec, because as we already said, 596 horsepower, 1,072 kilos, it's not the torquiest of engines. Sometimes rotaries can be very torquey. This one, not so much. You're putting out 333 foot-pounds, which isn't bad. It's enough to get the job done, and thankfully it doesn't weigh that much, so you don't really need a huge amount of torque. But, in particular, the power, when combined with the weight, means that the horsepower per tonne is pretty good for a, say, mid-level performance vehicle. 556 horsepower per tonne is really good territory for this car, and even the PP on this vehicle, I would say, is outstandingly good. So if you haven't checked out this car, definitely do so. But that's it for this pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.